Happy New Year's Eve, everyone, and welcome to a deep dive that, it kind of takes unconventional to a whole new level, I guess you could say.
Definitely.
You sent us some sources about this New Year's Eve event, and it's, they say it's COVID safe and alcohol
Oh,
free,
wow.
but it's also entirely clothing optional.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
it's definitely making me rethink how I thought I knew about ringing in the new year.
It is a unique approach, that's for sure.
Yeah.
There's a lot we can talk about here, like the science behind these precautions and the possible psychological and even physiological benefits of dancing in the buff.
Yeah, when I first saw this, I have to admit my eyebrows shot up.
Yeah.
But then I started going through all this material you sent over, and
Yeah.
honestly, I'm pretty intrigued.
Yeah.
Let's just start with the big thing right away. Long COVID. It seems like this event is taking it seriously.
Absolutely. They're using everything they can. Molecular tests for COVID and even the flu, too. Mandatory N95 masks the whole time.
Yeah.
And a seriously upgraded ventilation system, HEPA filters, and even UV light disinfection. It's like they turned a rave into a hospital.
Wow. It really does seem like they're going way beyond the normal precautions.
Yeah.
I think I read something from a Dr. Mullen about a possible link between long COVID and alcohol sensitivity.
Yeah, Dr. Mullen's doing some really interesting work on this. He suggests that long COVID could be triggering MCS in some people. It's basically a disorder that makes your body way overreact to histamines.
Oh, wow.
And alcohol is a big histamine trigger, which could explain why so many people with long COVID are finding that even just a little bit makes their symptoms way worse.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So the event is alcohol-free, but it's not like some kind of a puritanical thing. It's
Yeah.
about protecting people's health.
Exactly. It's all about creating an environment where everyone can feel comfortable and safe no matter what their health is like.
And then there's the nudity. I'm not gonna lie, it took me a second to really get that, but the more I read about it, the more the logic kind of started to come through, especially this thing about infrared light.
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
So our bodies actually need to be exposed to near and far infrared light for them to work the way they should. And it looks like it plays a role in how our mitochondria work. Those are the little powerhouses inside our cells that make energy.
Oh yeah, hold on. I'm trying to remember back to high school biology. Mitochondria. They're pretty important, right?
Yeah, they're a really big deal. They're involved in all kinds of stuff,
Hmm.
from how our bodies make energy to cell signaling to even our immune response. And research has shown that COVID-19 can actually damage mitochondria, which might be part of the reason why people have long COVID symptoms.
Okay, so that's the COVID connection. What does all this have to do with being naked?
Well, here's the thing. Our clothes block a lot of the near and far infrared light. So by being nude, the people at this event are getting as much of that light as possible. It's like a built-in health boost, you could say.
So we're talking about more than just feeling free. It could actually be good for you, like on a cellular level.
Yeah, it's a pretty compelling theory. And there's even more to it than the physical benefits.
Yeah.
The sources you sent talked about some interesting psychological aspects of being nude in a social setting.
Yeah, there was something about body recognition and how our clothes might get in the way of that.
Exactly. You know how when we see a face, we know our brains kind of light up. It triggers that dopamine response, that feel-good chemical that makes us want to connect. Well, it looks like we have a pretty similar response to recognizing bodies.
Really? I had no idea. So we're wired to not only recognize faces, but bodies too.
Yeah, it's a primal instinct.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. We haven't worn clothes for most of human history. Recognizing each other's bodies was how we survived, how we knew who was friend or foe, who was healthy, and who needed help. It's all deeply ingrained in our biology.
Wow, so you're saying that clothes might be messing with that? Like they're literally blocking our brains from seeing what's right there.
Yeah, that's the idea. It's not that clothes are bad or anything, but they do create these visual barriers that our brains have to work around. It's almost like we're always trying to put the pieces together, but our clothes keep getting in the way.
That is fascinating. So the idea is that in this naturist setting, we can finally experience that full body recognition. And that triggers a dopamine response, like when we see a familiar face.
Exactly. It's like your brain can finally breathe a sigh of relief because it can finally see the whole picture. And that feeling of recognition and connection can be incredibly powerful.
Yeah, it really makes you think about all the stuff we just take for granted, about how we interact with each other and the world, and how something as simple as clothes could be changing how we socialize without us even realizing it.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if some of the anxiety that people have about their bodies and how much work we put into trying to look a certain way, maybe some of that comes from this feeling of always being kind of visually disrupted, like we're never really fully seen. That's a really cool connection. Actually, one of the sources, the psychologist, Dr. Emily Nagoski, talks about how clothes can be like armor. It can protect us from the weather and stuff,
Mm.
but it can also create this wall between us and other people.
So at this event, they're taking away all that armor, like physically and psychologically. It's almost like a giant vulnerability experiment.
It's definitely brave.
Hmm.
And the sources say that this vulnerability actually helps people connect more and be more authentic. They say people are having better conversations and feeling less self-conscious and more like they can just be themselves.
That makes sense. If you're not worrying about what you look like or what people think of your clothes, you can actually just focus on the person you're talking to.
Exactly. And there's another piece to this whole body recognition thing. The sources talk about how our brains have a really hard time understanding bodies when there are horizontal lines in the way.
Horizontal lines. What do you mean?
Like, think about the lines that clothes make. The waistbands, the hems, the seams. Our brains evolved to see bodies the way they are naturally, without all those lines. So when they're there, it kind of messes with our brains.
So our clothes are messing with our brains.
It's more like our brains are working overtime to try to figure out what's going on. They're trying to understand how a normal body fits with all those extra lines and patterns. And that takes energy. It makes our brains work harder.
Wow. I never thought of it like that. So are you saying that without all those horizontal lines, our brains can finally relax and actually see the bodies we're looking at?
That's the idea.
Yeah.
And when that happens, we get that dopamine, that feeling of connection and recognition. It's like our brain is finally like,
Hmm.
okay, this makes sense.
It's amazing that just taking off our clothes could change how we interact with each other so much.
It really shows how powerful our biology is
Mm.
and how we still don't really understand all the little ways our bodies and minds connect with the world around us.
It makes you wonder, what else are we missing? What other things are affecting us without us even knowing?
That's a great question. And I think this event, strange as it is, might be giving us a few clues.
So what does this all mean for everyone else out there celebrating New Year's Eve in in a more normal way, I guess?
I think the big takeaway is just to be more aware. Be aware of how long COVID is still affecting people.
Mhm.
Be aware of things like infrared light and how they could help us. And maybe even start thinking about how our clothes might be changing how we interact with others.
Mhm.
It's all about questioning what we think we know and being open to new ideas.
This whole deep dive has been a real eye-opener. We've gone from COVID safety to infrared light therapy to the psychology of body recognition, all because of a New Year's Eve dance party.
Yeah, it just goes to show that there's always more to learn, and that sometimes the most unexpected things can lead to the most interesting discoveries.
This event is definitely different. It's making us rethink what it means to get together and celebrate. It makes you wonder if this could be what the future looks like: healthier, more connected.
That's a really interesting thought. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it could be really powerful. Imagine if we weren't so focused on how we look and more focused on our bodies and the people around us. Like if being vulnerable was seen as a good thing and we cared more about connecting with each other than competing, it's a pretty amazing idea.
It really is. And this event, in its own way, is kind of a step towards that. It shows what can happen when we let go of our hang-ups and challenge the rules and embrace everything about being human.
I mean, obviously, this isn't for everyone. Not everyone's going to be comfortable with being naked around other people, and that's totally okay. The important thing is that people have a choice and they feel safe.
Exactly. It's about having places where people can figure out their own boundaries and what they're comfortable with without being judged. And who knows, maybe by putting ourselves out there literally and figuratively and trying new things, we can start to get rid of some of those old ideas that have been holding us back.
Yeah, I like that. It's not about forcing anyone to do anything. It's about having more choices, seeing things from different angles, and making the world a more welcoming place for everyone.
That's what it's all about. This event is really just a way to start a conversation, to get people thinking differently about themselves and each other.
So, as we go into this new year, I want to leave everyone with something to think about. What are some of the things in your life that are holding you back? Those assumptions and expectations and fears that might be stopping you from really connecting with other people.
And are you willing to see what's on the other side of those things? Maybe it's something small like trying a new hobby or talking to someone you wouldn't normally talk to, or maybe it's just taking a minute to appreciate the little things. Whatever it is, be open to new experiences and see where they take you.
I like that a lot. So here's to a new year full of growth and connection and embracing the unexpected. Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year.
And thanks for joining us on this deep dive.